She's nothing but a souvenir.
Say her name properly. You picked the wrong woman to humiliate.
The man who walked into that ballroom every night with the weight of soul in his chest had never once lost his composure in public. Tonight, he lost it. Not with raised fists, not with shouting, not with the kind of theatrics that lesser men reached for when fury ran hot through their blood. Choi Tae-yoon simply stood up from his chair, smoothed the front of his jacket, and turned toward the woman who had just called his wife a souvenir. Every person in the room stopped breathing. "You picked the wrong woman," he said, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Before he said another word, "I need you to stay right here." Because the story of how Addis Osai became the woman Choi Tae-yoon would burn the world for starts 3 months before that moment, on a night neither of them was expecting anything at all. If you've ever believed that real love doesn't arrive gently, that sometimes it shows up with danger in its eyes and a devotion that changes the entire shape of your life, stay right here. We tell those kinds of stories, and this one goes all the way in. Subscribe now. You will want to be here for this. 3 months before that silence, Addis Osai was deep in the art of staying invisible. She had been hired by the Meridian Hotel Group as lead fashion consultant for their international showcase series. A 3-week contract meant to fund the next 6 months of her studio back in Lagos. Her job was clean: manage the styling department, coordinate the models, and stay clear of the people who believed the world owed them deference. She was 28 years old, had lived in 6 countries, and had the kind of bone-deep self-possession that only grows in a person who has had to fight, repeatedly, for the right to be taken seriously in rooms not built for her. She was also, it turned out, completely incapable of watching someone be humiliated and doing nothing. It started with director Han Mai-rae, the hotel's senior event coordinator, whose personal project that evening appeared to be reminding Addis, with escalating volume, that the styling assistant should use the service corridor. The 5th time she said it loud. In front of 30 guests, Addis set down her clipboard, straightened her shoulders. "I'm not the styling assistant," she said, and the room quieted the way rooms do when someone speaks with authority they were never supposed to have. "I am the lead consultant. If my name isn't on your list, I'd suggest checking again, and if the service corridor is your primary concern tonight, I'd recommend redirecting your energy toward the floral arrangements, which are listing dangerously to the left." Silence. And then, from somewhere behind her, quiet, brief, unmistakable, the sound of a man laughing. Choi Tae-yoon had not come to the Meridian Gala to be interested in anything. He had come the way he came to all such events, as a performance, a necessary ritual, a reminder to Seoul's elite that his name still sat at the top of every hierarchy that mattered. The Choi Syndicate ran threads through the city's infrastructure so deep that most people in power didn't know exactly where Tae-yoon's reach ended and their own began. He was 34 years old. He had built an empire from the ruins of his father's mistakes and the teeth of men who had underestimated him. He had stopped being surprised by anything a long time ago. And then a woman he had never seen before dismantled an entire power dynamic in 6 sentences and went calmly back to her clipboard. Something cracked open in his chest. He didn't name it, but he told his second-in-command, Lee Dong-hyuk, to find out everything about the woman with the natural hair and the iron spine. Dong-hyuk had a full file delivered within the hour. By the time the gala ended, Addis's contract had been quietly extended. By morning, she was in the hotel's top-floor suite, courtesy of an anonymous upgrade she assumed was a booking error. She was too busy working to investigate. They met in the elevator. She was on her way to a fitting. He had taken, entirely by design, a different bank of elevators than usual. He said nothing for 6 floors. She said nothing for 5 of them. Then, "You handled Director Han well." She glanced at him. A measured look, taking him in without revealing much. "Were you watching?" "Yes." "Then you owe me an apology for being a creep." She stepped off on the 7th floor. He rode the rest of the way in silence, staring at the closed doors with an expression that had no name in his vocabulary because he had never worn it before. He looked like a man who had just been handed a problem he was very much looking forward to solving. He learned her in pieces. Addis Osai, fashion consultant, textile arts from Accra, masters from Milan, studio in Lagos, clients on 3 continents. She argued about everything: food, architecture, the correct way to eat rice, and was always either right or interesting enough that being wrong barely mattered. She was also, Tae-yoon noted with careful precision, completely immune to being impressed by him. Most of Seoul trembled when his name came up, Adiz asked him if he'd ever tried jollof rice. He hadn't. By their fourth real conversation, she had given him her number without being asked, because she'd decided he was interesting and she was too old to pretend otherwise. By their sixth, he had made her dinner. By the end of the third week, the air between them in every room they shared had become something that required active management. The invitation was his idea. She hesitated, not because she feared the room, but because she'd stood in enough elite spaces to know exactly what happened when a black woman walked through doors she hadn't been expected to open. He sent the dress anyway, deep burgundy silk, perfectly fitted in a way that should have been impossible from a description alone. The note read only, "You look exactly right. T." She wore it. He had been mid-sentence with three of the most powerful men in Korean real estate when she walked through the door. He stopped talking. Dong Hyuk caught his glass before it hit the floor. Ti-yoon crossed the room in under 30 seconds, a pace his security team logged quietly and exchanged looks about, and met her near the entrance. "You came," he said. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I hoped you would." He offered his arm. She took it. For 2 hours the gala was perfect. He kept one hand at the small of her back, not possessively, but with a quiet certainty. She laughed at something he said near the bar in a way that made 3 people turn to look. Not because she was loud, but because the sound of it was honest, and honesty was rare in rooms like this. She was happy. And then Na Yoon-jae walked in. Na Yoon-jae had spent 3 years building a social empire on the premise that she would one day be Choi, Ti-yoon's wife. She had not been informed otherwise exactly. Ti-yoon had simply never confirmed it, and she had stopped waiting for confirmation. Watching him move through her gala with a black woman she had never heard of on his arm, looking at her the way Na Yoon-jae had always wanted him to look at her, was not what she had expected tonight. She gathered 3 women near the back. She waited. Adiz found them in the women's lounge 20 minutes later, stepping away from the noise for a quiet moment. "Oh," said Na Yoon-ji, and the word came out like a door closing softly in someone's face. "Are you with the catering staff?" Adiz looked at her. "We heard Ti-yoon had brought someone new." Na Yoon-jae tilted her head with the practiced gentleness of a woman who had perfected the art of the precise cruelty. "We were curious what kind of impression he was going for." One of the others laughed. "Soft, private, aimed. She's very exotic, like a souvenir he picked up abroad. I'm sure she thinks this is real," Na Yoon-jae continued, almost gently, the way a scalpel is gentle when it doesn't hurry. "Men like Ti-yoon sometimes do this. Something different, something new. But there are things that last and things that don't. And darling," she let the word stretch, "she is clearly not from this world. Whatever she believes is happening between them will not survive contact with his real life." The lounge was very quiet. Adiz let the silence hold for a full beat. "I've stood in rooms with women like you on 4 continents, she said, her voice the same temperature as the marble floor. "You always think the cruelty makes you powerful. It doesn't. It just makes you loud. A pause. I won't be lowering myself to match your altitude, excuse me." She turned and walked out. She got her bag. She thanked the event coordinator. She was halfway to the exit when Na Yoon-jae's voice carried across the ballroom. Bright, performative, designed to land. "Careful with the accessory, Ti-yoon. She might stain your reputation." Choi Ti-yoon turned around. He stopped in front of Na Yoon-jae. The room rearranged itself to witness it. No one spoke. "Yoon-jae," she smiled, nervous now. "Ti-yoon, I was only—" "Her name," he said, and the quiet in his voice was the most dangerous thing anyone in that room had heard in years, "is Adiz Osai. She is not an accessory. She is not an accessory. She is not an experiment." A pause that lasted exactly as long as it needed to. "She is the woman I have chosen to stand beside me, and the next person in this room who speaks of her as anything less than that will discover precisely how much I am willing to dismantle when something I care about is disrespected." He turned from Na Yoon-jae before she could form a response. He looked for Ada. She was already gone. Seoul at night had no patience for grief. It just kept moving. Neon and engines and the cold edge of November pressing against bare arms. She was almost at the curb when a hand caught her arm from behind. She turned. Ti-yoon stood in his shirt sleeves. He'd left his jacket somewhere inside and apparently hadn't noticed. He looked undone in a way she had never seen, not disheveled exactly, but stripped, like a man who had made a calculation and left the performance in the coat check. "Don't leave," he said. "I'm not your responsibility. I'm not asking out of responsibility." "Then why?" She held her ground. "You defended me beautifully in there. I mean that. But I've stood in rooms like that one my entire life. I know what I am to those people. and I'm realizing I'm not entirely sure what I am to you." He was quiet for a long moment. Ti-Yoon did not give words carelessly. She had learned that about him early. "You are the only person in 4 years who has made me want to explain myself," he said. "That is not a small thing for me. It's not an answer. No, but it's the most honest thing I've said in this city in longer than I can measure." His eyes didn't move from hers. "Stay. Not for them. For me." She looked at him a long time. Then she reached up and straightened his collar, quietly, precisely, the way she did everything, and his breath went rough for just a moment before he caught it. She went back inside. But she carried Na Yoon-jae's words with her, folded small and tucked somewhere deep, and she did not let herself forget them. Whatever they had been before the gala became something quieter and more terrifying after it. He stopped pretending his schedule didn't bend around her. She stopped watching the exits. He told her about the syndicate the night she found the gun. She'd reached into his jacket for her phone. She'd left it in his pocket, and her hand closed around cold metal instead. She stepped back. He turned, read her face, and told her everything. Not because she demanded it, because she deserved it, and somewhere between the elevator and her laughing at his pronunciation of her name, he had decided he was done building walls in the directions that faced her. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet. "Are you afraid of me now?" he asked. She shook her head. "Not of you. Of losing you." A pause, which is new and inconvenient. They stood later at his apartment window, soul spread below them like a map of every risk they were choosing to take, and she leaned her head against his shoulder. His arm came around her like it was the simplest thing in the world. "Everything," he said quietly, as if answering a question she hadn't asked aloud. "That's what you are to me." She turned to face him. The space between them was very small. His forehead came to rest against hers. She felt the edge of his breath. "I know," she said. "I was waiting for you to say it." She left before dawn, not because she didn't want to stay, because she wanted to stay too much, and wanting something this much, in a world his enemies inhabited, felt like the most dangerous thing she could do. Na Yoon-jae's words were still folded somewhere beneath her ribs. She was a guest in his world, and guests, no matter how wanted, could always be asked to leave. She texted him at 5 a.m., "I need some space to think. Please give me that." He read it at 5:04. He didn't respond. By 7, she had half her suitcase packed. By 8, she was looking up flights. At 8:17, someone knocked. The 2 men in the hallway wore hotel uniforms that didn't fit right. Shoulders too broad, earpieces too deliberate, eyes scanning the corridor rather than her. She tried to close the door. One of them caught it. "Don't make noise," the taller one said. "Director Park sends his regards to Mr. Choi." She screamed anyway. Not because she expected rescue, but because her bag was within reach, and screaming bought 3 seconds. She threw the bag at the window hard enough to crack it and trigger the pressure alarm. They got her. But the alarm was already shrieking through the building. Dong Hyuk walked in with a look Ti-Yoon had only seen twice in 6 years, and both times someone had died. Hotel security called. Her room was breached. 2 men, 1 broken window, no sign of her. He stood up slowly. "Park," he said. It wasn't a question. "Park," Dong Hyuk confirmed. Director Park Soo-Hyun had been trying to fracture the Choi syndicate for 18 months. Lawyers, legislation, sabotage, 3 attempts, 3 failures. This was his 4th approach, and the first time he had touched something personal. He was about to understand exactly why that was a mistake. Inside the Mappa warehouse, Adis had been working on the knot around her wrists for 40 minutes with the methodical calm of a woman who had decided fear was not a useful tool right now. She had catalogued the space. 2 guards, 1 entrance, 1 high window. She had established, from their conversation, that they weren't going to hurt her. They were holding her for leverage. She found this insufficient. She had almost entirely freed her wrists when the door came off its hinges. His eyes found her immediately. They moved over her, the raw wrists, the torn edge of her dress, her face, with the precise attention of a man cataloging the distance between almost and disaster. She looked down at the rope, back at him. "I was almost done," she said. He exhaled, a ragged, involuntary sound, and crossed the room. His hands came to her face, checking her. Careful in a way that had nothing to do with tenderness and everything to do with terror wearing gentleness like a disguise. "Are you hurt?" "My pride, mostly." He pressed his forehead to hers. She felt him breathe her in. Once, deep, the way a man breathes when he has spent 12 hours not properly breathing. "I'm sorry," he said. "This reached you because of me. It won't happen again," she told him. "No," he said. It won't. She believed him. What happened to Park Soo-hyun was not violence. It was worse. By the time Seoul woke up, every financial regulator in the country had received a dossier. 6 years of undisclosed conflicts of interest, fraudulent real estate instruments, manufactured permits, and 4 instances of regulatory fraud that were individually devastating and collectively catastrophic. All documented, all irrefutable. All assembled by a man who had been holding the file for 11 months, waiting for the right reason. Park was escorted from his office tower before noon. Tae-yoon didn't tell her until she was discharged from the hospital, wrists freshly bandaged, his hand around hers. She saw it on the news from the bedside. "Was that you?" she asked. "He touched you." That could have taken years through proper channels. "I had the file for 11 months. She looked at him. "Why did you wait?" "I didn't have the right reason yet." His thumb moved across the back of her hand. "Now I did." There it was again, the thing that kept breaking her open. Not the power, not the empire. The priority. She was the reason. "I was going to leave," she said quietly. "The morning it happened, my bag was half-packed. I know. I saw your message. You didn't respond. I didn't know how to ask you to stay without making it about what I needed." A pause, careful and honest. "I'm asking now. Stay. Not for the gala, not for the dress, not for any of the things I sent that were really just me not knowing how to say I don't want you to go. Stay because I will spend every day making sure you never regret that you did." She looked at him for a long time. "You're genuinely terrible at asking for things." "I know. Tae-yoon." She leaned forward. "Ask me properly." He held her gaze. Then, quietly, with a gravity that had nothing to do with his empire and everything to do with the man underneath it. "Stay with me, Oddies." She put her hand on his face. "Okay," she said softly. "But next time there's a not situation, I'm handling it myself. Don't rush." He laughed, brief, raw, completely unguarded, and the sound of it undid something in her that she hadn't known was still wound tight. The announcement appeared in 3 Korean papers and 2 international fashion outlets on the same morning. Choi Tae-yoon, chairman of the Choi Group, married in a private ceremony. His wife, Adis Osi Choi, award-winning fashion consultant and founding creative director of Osi Studio Seoul, a luxury design house launching in spring. Na Yoon-jae was not on the guest list. The ceremony was small and honest. Her family in from Lagos and Accra, his mother holding Ada's hands and crying in a way that needed no translation. Dong Hyuk stood stiffly in a rented tuxedo, a full inch too narrow at the shoulders, and didn't seem to notice. Tae-yoon said his vows with the economy of a man who had spent his whole life rationing words and intended to spend every one of these well. Adia said hers twice, once in English, once in Igbo, and watched him quietly form the syllables of the Igbo version along with her, unprompted. She stopped mid-verse. "Did you memorize that?" "I had 3 weeks." She covered her mouth. He lifted her chin. "Don't cry. I'm not done." He finished every word. She cried anyway. 6 weeks after the wedding, she called him into the kitchen at 6 a.m. 2 things on the counter, a plate of jollof rice, and a test. "The rice is an apology for the hour," she said. "The other thing is, its own conversation." He crossed the kitchen without speaking, picked it up, set it down. Then he pulled her in, both arms, no space between them, and held her without words for a long time. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were wet. He didn't hide it. "You're going to be incredible," he said. "You too," she said. "I'll teach you how to hold a baby. It's harder than it looks." He laughed against her hair, warm, low, completely unguarded. Outside, Seoul moved through its morning the way cities do. Continuous, indifferent, full of its own story. But inside, in a kitchen that smelled like jollof rice and the beginning of everything, Choi Tae-yoon and Adis Osai Choi stood in each other's arms and let the future arrive. If this story did something to your chest, if Adis's quiet dignity held something you recognized in yourself, if Tae-yoon's love looked like something you've been waiting to believe is real, then you're already in the right place. We don't do surface level here. We go all the way in. Hit subscribe, ring the bell, and drop a comment. I genuinely want to know what moment broke you first. Was it the elevator? The rain outside the hotel? Or was it the way he said her name in front of the entire room? Tell me, because we are just getting started.